And welcome everybody again to another episode of I'll Read That, the web series where your stories get read. If you have a story to tell, if you have a poem, a short story, a novel, any unpublished work that you just want, your fellow authors to help you get better, improve your craft, and really get an outside perspective, please submit it to the web series and allow me to read it for you. These are all cold reads, and I enjoy doing them for you guys. So today we're going to continue on with my novel entitled Toby. We're in chapter 1, Alone in the World. As he wandered through the city streets, a tiny figure lost in the vastness of the world around him, the sun had risen high in the sky, casting long shadows over the pavement. The city bustling with life. People hurried past, their faces drawn in concentration or lost in their own thoughts. Cars zipped by, honking and rumbling, filling the air with noise. To most he was invisible, a small scrappy black puppy with matted fur and floppy ears weaving his way through the maze of feet and wheels. His stomach growled loudly, a constant reminder of his hunger. He had not eaten anything since the stale piece of bread he had found the day before, and the ache in his belly had grown into a sharp gnawing pain. He sniffed the ground as he walked, his nose twitching, searching for any signs of food, a discarded crust, a piece of fruit, anything that might fill the emptiness inside him. But the streets were unforgiving. The dumpsters were closed, their lids heavy and impossible for a small puppy like him to pry open. The trash cans he managed to reach had already been picked clean, and the scraps left behind were either too old to eat or quickly snatched up by other, more experienced strays. He trotted down a narrow alley, his paws slipping on the damp ground. He caught a faint scent of something familiar, something warm. He followed the smell, his heart beating faster with anticipation. It led him to a small bakery, its doors wide open, the scent of freshly baked bread and pastries wafting through the air. His mouth watered, and he crept closer, staying close to the wall, his eyes fixed on the open doorway. Inside, he could see a man in a white apron, busy arranging loaves of bread on a shelf. His nose twitched, and he took a cautious step closer. The scent was almost overwhelming, making his head spin with desire. He wanted nothing more than to dash inside, grab a piece of bread, and run, but he knew better not. He knew better than to be too bold. He waited, his little body tense, watching and waiting for the right moment. The man turned his back just for a second, and he darted forward, slipping into the bakery's doorway. He skidded to a stop near a small basket filled with day-old rolls. His heart pounded in his chest as he grabbed one with his teeth, the bread warm and soft against his mouth. He turned to run, his prize clenched tightly, but he wasn't fast enough. "Hey, get out of here, you little thief!" the baker shouted, his voice booming in a small space. He grabbed a broom and waved it wildly, charging at him. Fear shot through him like a lightning bolt. He dropped the roll and turned to flee. His paws scrambled against the tile floor. The baker swung the broom, missing him by inches, but the loud thud against the floor sent him skittering out the door and back into the alley. He didn't stop running until he was sure he was far enough away, his chest heaving with each breath, his ears flat against his head. His heart pounded in his chest. As he ducked behind a row of garbage cans, his eyes wide and his body trembling. He had been so close, so very close, and now his mouth was empty. The gnawing hunger sharper than ever, he could still taste the faint hit of bread on his tongue, and it made his stomach twist with longing. After a moment, he peeked out from behind the cans, his ears perking up. The baker was now just a distant sight down the street, the scent of fresh bread still lingering in the air, but he knew he couldn't go back. He had learned his lesson, at least for today. He continued on his way, his legs feeling heavier with every step. He was tired, so very tired. He wandered past shops and homes, his eyes searching for anything, anyone who might be kind. People glanced at him with a mix of indifference and annoyance, their hurried steps and busy lives, leaving no room for a small, scrappy pup. As he turned a corner, he found himself on a quieter street. The noise of the city seemed to fade, replaced by the sound of distant birds and the rustle of leaves in the wind. He padded along the sidewalk, his head low, when he noticed a small park up ahead. It was not much, a patch of green in the middle of all the gray, but to him, it looked like an oasis. He stumbled into the park, his paws sinking into the cool grass. He sniffed around, hoping to find something edible, but there was nothing. just dirt and fallen leaves. He sighed and lay down, his small body curling into a tight ball. The sun had dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm golden glow over the park, but he felt no warmth. He felt only the cold ache of hunger and the deep loneliness that had settled in his heart. He watched as a few children played on the swings and slides, their laughter ringing through the air. For a moment he was captivated by them, his eyes following their every move. He had seen children before, but they always seemed so far away, like something from a different world. He wondered if they would notice him, if they would call to him, or perhaps share a bit of their snacks. But they were too caught up in their games, too busy with their own little joys to notice the small black puppy watching them from the grass. A woman walked by pushing a stroller, and for a moment his heart lifted. He stood up, wagging his tail hesitantly, hoping she might look his way, but she didn't. She kept her eyes forward, talking softly to the baby in the stroller, and his tail slowly dropped. As the sun began to set, the park emptied. The children went home, and the woman with the stroller disappeared down a path, and he was left alone once more. The shadows grew longer, the air cooler, and he felt the weight of the day pressing down on him. He hadn't found food, hadn't found a friend, hadn't found anything but more of the same cold, hunger, and solitude. He curled up tighter, trying to make himself small, trying to keep the warmth in his body. He knew he had to find shelter for the night. He had no strength left. His eyes grew heavy, and he felt a tear slip down his cheek. He was alone, truly alone in this big, unforgiving world, and he didn't know how much longer he could keep going. But just as he closed his eyes, ready to give into sleep, he felt a soft touch on his back. His eyes flew open, and he turned his head to see a girl crouched beside him, her hand gently stroking his fur. She was small, with dark hair and bright, kind eyes. She smiled at him, her face full of sympathy and warmth. The little girl stood at the edge of the park, her fingers curling tightly around the hem of her jacket. The day was bright with children laughing and running, their voices carried by the breeze, but her attention was caught by something at the far end, near the thick cluster of oak trees. She'd seen a flicker of movement, a small shadow darting in and out of the dappled light, and it had piqued her curiosity. Her feet shuffled on the pavement, torn between staying on the path like her parents had always told her, and following the pull in her heart. She took a hesitant step forward, her eyes focused on the shady spot beneath the trees. As she got closer, her breath caught in her throat. There, almost hidden by the thick roots, was a tiny puppy. He was all alone, his fur dirty and matted, with his body curled up tight as if he was trying to make himself disappear. His eyes were wide and scared, darting around as if he expected something terrible to happen at any moment. The girl stayed still, not wanting to startle him. She watched as he slowly lowered his head into his paws, his little body shivering slightly. Every now and then his ears would twitch at a sudden sound, a child's laugh, a distant bark, and he'd glance around nervously before settling again, as if trying to decide whether it was safe to relax. He looked so tired, so worn out, as if he had been running for days and had finally found a spot where he could rest, even just for a moment. She felt her heart ache at the sight. He was so small, so fragile. Her gaze softened and she took another step closer, moving as quietly as she could. She watched him intently, studying the way his little chest rose and fell with each breath, the way his nose twitched, sniffing the air cautiously. He seemed unsure, caught between the instinct to stay hidden and the deep exhaustion that made his eyes droop lower and lower. Minutes passed and the girl didn't move. She could feel her heart beating in her chest, a steady rhythm that seemed to echo in her ears. She stayed rooted to the spot, barely daring to breathe, afraid that even the slightest sound would scare him away. Her eyes never left him, watching as his tense muscles gradually relaxed, his breathing becoming deeper, slower. He blinked a few times, his eyelids fluttering as if he was fighting sleep, but eventually the exhaustion won. His head lowered further, resting completely on his paws now. His eyes closed fully, and he let out a small, almost inaudible sigh. For a moment she thought she saw his ears twitch again, as if he was listening for danger even in his sleep. But then she stilled, curling up a little but then he stilled, curling up a little tighter, as if trying to hold on to whatever warmth he could find. She felt a strange, gentle warmth fill her chest, a feeling she couldn't quite put into words. He was just a puppy, a tiny frightened thing, but there was something about him that made her want to reach out, to comfort him, to make him feel safe. She could see how vulnerable he was, how alone he must feel. She slowly approached the little ball of fur. Her hand moved almost of its own accord, reaching out slowly toward him. Her fingers trembled just slightly with the nervousness of it. She didn't know if he would let her touch him, but she had to try. She had to let him know he wasn't alone. She paused for a moment, her hand hovering just above his small, dirty coat, hesitating, waiting. "Hey, little guy," she whispered, her voice soft and soothing. "Are you lost?" He blinked, unsure of what to do. He wanted to run, to hide, but something in her voice, in her touch, made him stay. He wagged his tail ever so slightly, a small, hopeful wag, and she giggled. "You must be so hungry," she said, reaching into her pocket and pulling out a small piece of sandwich. She held it out to him and he sniffed it cautiously. It smelled of ham and cheese and bread. Real food. Something good. He glanced up at her, searching her eyes for any sign of threat, but all he saw was kindness. "Go on," she encouraged, pushing the sandwich closer to his nose. "It's okay." He hesitated for just a moment longer, then gently took the sandwich from her hand, his tail wagging a little more now. He chewed slowly, savoring every bite, his heart swelling with gratitude. The girl laughed again, a light, happy sound that seemed to fill the whole park. "There you go," she said, stroking his fur again. "See? We're friends now." For the first time in what felt like forever, he felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he wasn't as alone as he had thought. Maybe, just maybe, he had found someone who cared. And as the last rays of the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, he felt a warmth in his heart that had nothing to do with the setting sun. He leaned into the girl's hands, feeling her gentle touch, and for a moment he forgot all about the hunger and the cold. The girl's hands rested softly on his fur, her touch light and gentle, as if she knew how fragile he was. Her fingers moved slowly, tracing small circles over his back, and he felt a warmth spread from her touch, radiating through his small, tired body. It was feeling he had it was a feeling he had never known before, something calm and comforting, something that made his heart beat just a little faster with a mix of wonder and gratitude. He dared to look up at her, his wide eyes meeting hers, and saw kindness there, something he had never seen in the harsh world he had known so far. Her eyes were bright, filled with a gentle curiosity and care. He didn't know why she had stopped or why she had reached out to him, but he was grateful that she had. Her presence felt like a small light in the darkness. He had grown accustomed to a warmth. Her presence felt like a small light in the darkness he had grown accustomed to, a warmth against the cold that had settled deep in his bones. She continued to stroke his fur, her movements slow and soothing. He felt his body begin to relax, the tension easing out of his muscles, and he leaned a little closer to her, as if trying to absorb every bit of warmth and comfort she offered. A soft sigh escaped him, a sound of contentment he hadn't known he could make. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting himself be lost in the sensation, feeling something swell in his heart, something he couldn't quite name, but that felt like hope. The minutes passed, and the girl kept whispering softly to him, her words a quiet murmur that he couldn't fully understand, but somehow knew were meant to comfort. Her voice was like a melody, a gentle song that calmed the storm that had been raging inside him for so long. He pressed closer to her, wanting to keep this feeling for as long as he could, wanting to remember what it felt like to be touched with such care. He felt her hand move to his ears, scratching lightly, and his tail gave a tiny wag almost involuntarily. The girl giggled softly as at this, a sweet, joyful sound that made his heart flutter. He didn't understand why he felt this way, why he suddenly wanted to so badly to stay in this moment forever, but he did. He wanted to stay right here with this girl who looked at him with such kindness, who touched him so gently as if he mattered. But then a voice called out from across the park, a deeper voice filled with a familiar authority. "Lily, time to go." The sound startled him, and he flinched, pulling back slightly, his eyes darting nervously to the source. The girl, Lily, looked over her shoulder, and he saw the conflict flash in her eyes, the reluctance to leave and the desire to stay just a little longer. "I have to go," she whispered, her voice soft and filled with regret. Her hand lingered on his fur for a moment more, giving one last gentle stroke. "But I'll come back. I promise." She slowly rose to her feet, still watching him with the same gentle gaze. His heart ached at the thought of her leaving, but something in her voice, in the way she had looked at him, made him believe her. As she took a few steps backwards, he felt the coldness start to creep back in, the warmth of her touch fading from his skin. He whimpered softly, his eyes pleading with her to stay just a little longer. "I promise," she repeated with a small, reassuring smile. Then, with one last look, she turned and ran toward the voices calling her name. He watched her go, start sinking a little, feeling the loneliness return. But this time it was different. This time he had something to hold on to, a promise, a hope. He turned back to his spot under the tree, curling up into a tight ball once more. The night air was growing colder, but he felt a faint warmth still lingering in his fur, a memory of her gentle touch. And as the shadows lengthened and the stars began to peek out from the darkening sky, he closed his eyes, holding on to the thought of her return. His heart, though weary, held on to a new hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't truly alone anymore. He was still alone in the world, but he had found a small spark of kindness, and for tonight, that was enough. And that's the end of chapter 1. I don't want to critique my own writing, but, you know, I want to hear what you guys have to think. So please like, comment, and subscribe. Even though it is my work and I'm going to eventually do a rewrite on it, your comments, your critiques, your view of sentence structure and how things are flowing and of the story in general may not only help me as a writer in the future on my rewrites, but it may help other writers who are dealing with the same dilemmas. So I ask you, please take the time, write something positive, write something negative, and just continue to help other writers develop and grow in their craft. And like always, please, if you have a story that you want read, please submit it. A poem, a short story, a novel. I'm always up for a great book. Just remember that I am your advocate and I will always, always be there for you. So if you have something to submit and you want it read, I'll read that. Thank you all.